Hey there, Wendy here with Jazzydoodledesigns, and today I'm going to do a little color along in Kerby Rosanes Worlds Within Worlds, and I'm going to be doing this page right here. I'm going to start with Neocolor IIs. We're going to do our background, we're going to do a base layer, and then I'll follow it up with Prismacolor colored pencils. So, let's go. Hello everybody, I hope you're all doing well. First off, let's start by moving our book to where it's comfortable for us to color on the page. While it really doesn't matter so much in this particular book, or I shouldn't say book, but on this page, I am using the Neocolor IIs as a base layer. I'm going to be going over everything with colored pencil, so it really doesn't matter if I get a nice, smooth, consistent background as much as if I was going to be leaving this as a standalone color. However, just guys, I do it because when I flip the book and I'm filming, it's very awkward for the viewer. So I really try and avoid that. But at the same time, you'll get a much smoother base layer without like any harsh lines if you actually move it. So I do recommend that you do that. Also, you can go a little slower and in little circles if you want this to be your main layer, and then you'll probably need to do a second layer using, the brush to tip method as opposed to direct to paper method like we're doing here. I will move my book up here in a second. I'm sorry I got the bottom out. There's something about how I line up my camera. The camera I line it all up in the monitor, and then when I hit the record button, it zooms in a little bit more. And I'm aware of that, but I don't always think about that when I'm filming, so apologies. But here I'm basically just using the Neocolor IIs as a base, and we're going to apply them directly to the paper. I'm going to go over the entire background here using various colors, and then I'll activate them all at once. But my thought is that we're going to have a much darker bottom because I want this skull to look like about 2/3 of it are under the water. And I must say that this picture was wildly stolen off of Pinterest. I was scrolling one day and I saw it, and I just thought it was one of the most stunning images. And my image is very similar to that one. However, it's one of those pins where they didn't pin it to a page or to a person or to anything. So it literally just, if you click on it, it just clicks to the picture with no other discernible identifying markers at all. So I don't know who to give credit for the inspiration for this, and my apologies, but I just loved the concept of the mist that wasn't unique to me. I have no idea how they did their page, what they used for a medium, none of that. So all of that is 100% mine. However, I do like to give credit when, whether it's a color palette or whatever, a technique, I like to give credit when I find something, and unfortunately in this case I just can't. So if you're the owner, if you see this and go, oh, that looks just like mine, please reach out to me because I will pin a comment so that I can give you credit. But anyway, back to this. Basically my idea is I'm using the purples and grays and whatnot to just lay down a foundation here. So I'm not being super, as you can tell, I'm not being super picky about where I put these colors in general. My idea is that this piece that I'm coloring with the beige is going to be the part that sticks out of the water, so I want it to look a little more skull colored, whereas below that I've used the grays, the purples, the blues, and the indigos in order to make it look like it's darker and submerged. I hope that makes sense. But basically, whenever you're working on Kerby's pages, he has done a lot of the work for us with his shading. Now, some people might not like that, but I appreciate it because then I know, oh, go a little darker here. So in this case, I'm using sepia, which is kind of a brown gray, and I'm going in to wherever his lines are more together to indicate that that's where the shading should be. Now, much of the shading I am going to be using colored pencils, but this just once again, is a foundation. Plus, there's something very fun about using Neocolor IIs. I don't know if it's because it reminds me of my childhood and using crayons and or what, but I find it fun, and it's a very loose medium, meaning with colored pencils you can't just like scribble on the page and have it look good when you're done, whereas with these you kind of can, because you're going to be using your water to activate them and spread them and blend them. So if you haven't ever used this medium, I really encourage it. Guys, I've had these Neocolor IIs for years. This, I believe, was probably one of the very first art mediums I had, because I started with card making and scrapbooking and then moved into kind of like mixed media journals. And when I made that transition many years ago, Neocolor IIs were popular. And so I invested in some, and I love them because they last forever. Look at these look at the crayons. Like, you can't even tell that I've used them. And I've used these on many, many projects. And so, yes, they're more expensive, but sometimes you really get what you pay for. The crayon itself is 100% pigment, meaning you don't have any wood, you don't have anything. You can use them without sharpening them. Every once in a while I will sharpen them, but usually I use them duller, and it works just fine. And when I need to get into tight spaces, I use the tip, where you wet the tip of your brush and then touch it to the little Neocolor II, and then apply that in your small area. At this point, I'm going to keep the clouds just with white. Here I'm using an Arteza water brush. You could use any water brush. You could use a brush on water, just a paintbrush on water. I do recommend that you put a piece of paper behind while you're doing this, because what happens is right there on the edge, it can kind of seep underneath. And what I have here is a dollar store cutting board that I've cut to side, and it works great because you can wipe it off. However, if you move that cutting board, or the cutting board, while it's wet, you will get a little tiny bit underneath. And that's what happens here. It's not a big deal. I got a tiny bit on the back page. I'll insert a picture here. So you can see that tiny little bit that popped through on the bottom. I don't think that's going to be a big deal. We can either gesso it out or I can use a darker color on the bottom. But it's something to be aware of. You always run the risk when you use water mediums. However, don't let that stop you. Guys, it's a coloring book, and it's the whole point of this is not to have museum quality art pictures. This is my opinion. It is to have a good time and enjoy ourselves and get away from the stress of the world, get away from even the stuff we love, our kids, our family. Sometimes you need a little break, a little me time, and that's what coloring is supposed to do. So while be cautious and be aware of the potential and, work to avoid it, don't let it be the barrier of having a good time. Now, that's just my 2 cents. That's how I view this. And I love, love, love working with the Neocolor IIs, distressing, ink tints, all of these things that maybe have more potential to bleed through. But Kerby has really good paper. And if you're just aware of it, it wasn't really so much that it seeped through in this case. It was that I had a wet medium sitting on that plastic surface, and when I wiggled and moved that plastic surface, kind of shifted a little, it transferred the ink. So once again, no big deal. But you can see that when I'm activating these, once again, I'm not being overly cautious. If this was going to be my main layer, meaning no colored pencils over it, I would be much more mindful of the strokes that I was making, and I would go over it with a second layer to even it out. But in this case, I'm not worried about it at all. So here I'm just activating those lighter colors that kind of make it look like it's glowing there in the skull, or just, I think that's the part that makes it feel underwater to me. So I wanted this area on this side, especially on the right hand side, to be much darker. In retrospect, looking back, I probably should have, I think I used indigo when I first started. I probably should have led with the darkest color and then applied the colored Neo 2s over the top. But it'll work for sure. That's the tip method that I'm talking about. I wanted to get along that edge, so I just took my water brush, touched it to the tip, got some ink on it or some pigment on it, and then filled in that little gap right there at the seam. But you can see how this darkened that up quite a bit. But once again, I think that had I started with the black, that might have been a little better. But not enough that I want to go back and instruct you to do it differently, because I don't know, and I don't want to tell you to do it a different way and then you're unhappy with the results. This way, at least you know what the results should be if you're following. So I will point out, I had a lot of requests to do an Instagram, both because it's easier to DM me, but also, I don't know, I guess people just like Instagram. So I did break down and I set up an Instagram account this weekend, right before I did the giveaway video. So if you haven't already, make sure you sign up if you're watching this in October 2023, because who knows when you'll be watching this. But if you're watching this in October 2023, I just set up the Instagram, and the giveaway is available for entries until the end of October. So until October 31st. And I can't remember what time it says on the giveaway. I think 8 o'clock Mountain Standard. But then on November 1st, I will do a video and I will spin a wheel with your names, all the names of the entries on it, and we will get a winner. And it's going to be $50 gift card to Dick Blick. That way international people can take part, as well as a one-on-one session with me to talk about whatever you want. We can go over your art. We can talk about, like, if there's a particular page that you want me to discuss more in depth or whatever. So it's really whatever the winner wants as far as that goes. But I would love to see you on Instagram. I also have a Facebook page, and that page I always just, it's right now it's just simply a lot of me posting what you know, when I do a YouTube video, then I'll post it on the Facebook page, but also things that I find interesting in the coloring community I'll put there. For example, I just learned, I don't know if you know who she is. Her name's Emily Oberg, and I did in one of my haul videos, I showed her fairy tales book. She is out of Sweden, and I believe that she's the one that inks up, I know Erie does, but I think she does as well, inks her entire illustrations using toothpicks and ink, which I think is crazy. The amount, I can barely control a pencil. I can't even imagine controlling a a toothpick. But anyway, one of her books, it's Fairy Tales and Legends, and I think it's Sagor Sangner. Sorry, I don't do Swedish well. But anyway, I'm super excited. It's going to be reprinted in the United States in 2024. And I'm really excited. If you like Hannah Carlson, Marie Trolley, that style, I think you would really like it. I will definitely keep you posted as I find more information, but that's the kind of stuff I put on my Facebook. So back to the picture. I have been using Prismacolor colored pencils, which I'm going to use throughout, and I use black. I definitely wanted a much deeper tone here. My apologies. I guess I use cool gray 90%. Pay attention to your own color along, Wendy. I lied. That was black. It was definitely black. So, my apologies. I will mark that right now. Okay, phew, I'm back. I guess that's the benefit of voiceover, is that you can catch those kind of mistakes. So, anyway, back to the color along. Right here I am using this denim blue, and I'm bringing it down a little bit into that black. And now I'm going to switch to indigo blue, because as I go over the black, I wanted a deeper tone. But I wanted the brighter tone to be by the skull, because when we're done, it's going to give it a little bit of a glow effect. I don't know what my deal's been, but I've noticed in the last few months I've really been drawn to things that have kind of a glow effect. I think I like the challenge of it, but anyway, that was my thought in this for sure. Had I used the indigo alone up there at the top, it would not have given it as much contrast between the black and the denim blue does. Denim blue and black has a much bigger contrast than indigo blue and black, so that's why I did that all along the school. I have now switched to paper underneath. I like to have a piece of paper underneath just simply because sometimes I mark off the paper, and I found that if I have paper there, it's just a smoother way of working, and I don't risk getting the mark down the side of the book. So I'm just doing the same thing over on this other side. You're going to find I do quite a few layers because I definitely want it very dark, and just a hint of the brighter blue along the skull line. But you can see how when I go over that purple tone, it really changes the color. And I decided, wow, I just insist on using that cool gray 90%. This is black, so I will make the annotation, but I decided I wanted that darker tone to go up more. And then here I decided that I wanted that dark to go much closer to the skull. I just barely wanted some of that blue to peek out. Okay, so we're back to our denim blue. We're just going to bring that color up a little bit. So as I go up, you're going to see me shift farther and farther back on the pencil. This helps me lighten my touch. I do not have a light touch, guys. I am one of those people that if somebody can get 15 layers, I can probably get 7. So that is something I try and be conscious about. But now I'm just bringing that blue into the purple. So my goal here is to have it not be quite as purple. I like the purple undertone, but I want it to be just that. So I want it to read a little more blue when I'm done. So what else is new? So I talked about the giveaway, but you know what I didn't talk about is how grateful I am to have such a fabulous community. You guys have really went out of your way to make me feel good about the channel, appreciative, and I love all of your comments, and I wrote them all down. And so I'm going to be employing all of those going forward because it's really important to me to provide content that you're interested in. So back to the picture for just a minute. I'm going around the edges of this lighter green with this blue. And I'm going to do this with the darker blue too, I believe. But the whole idea is to not only add some shading and depth, but it will really make the lighter color even more vibrant by adding this darker color around the edge. So that's my thoughts in doing this. So anyway, back to the comments. A lot of you I heard a lot of comments about wanting more color alongs and tutorials, which I will be doing going forward for sure. I'm always looking for content that I can show you, specifically how to color something. And maybe I'll do some short tutorials like how to color a pumpkin, or how to color a fall leaf. Maybe I can do that going into November. But someone commented that they would like to see one book, coloring the entire book. My thought right now, for sure, is I have the flower. Hold on, I want to give you the right name. Okay, The Flower Year by Leila Dooley. This is such a beautiful book. It's a hardbound book, but what I was thinking of doing is starting this in January, because if you haven't seen the book, it starts in January. There's like the page that has the name, it has a quote, and then there's a 2-page spread, and then 2 individual pages, another 2-page spread, and then one of the individual leaves, and then each month is like that. And so what I thought I would do is maybe do at least one color along a month out of that book, to match the month that it's in, and then try and color the other images on my own as finished pages, or something along those lines, because I really like this book, and I think I've been kind of putting off coloring in it because I thought I would like to start it in January and just move through it that way. So let me know in the comments what you think of this idea, what you think of this book. Maybe what I'll do is I'll try and do a flip through, even though this isn't a new book by any means. In fact, she has a new book out that just came out this year, which a subscriber told me about, and I bought it, and it's called Beautiful Planet. And but this one came out in 2017. So regardless of whether or not I do this on the channel, that's my goal, is to color this book, if not in its entirety, at least one of the pictures per month in the book during the month. I am really struggling to spit this out. I hope you're following what I mean. There's pages that coincide with the month, and my goal is to color at least one of those each month. Okay, back to the picture. So what I'm doing here is, in between the little bones, there are little crevices, and Kerby has kind of marked those in with those dark lines. So I am going in, I don't know what my problem is, with, actually this is cool gray, 90%. So good job, Wendy, you managed to get it right that time. So I'm going in with this cool gray 90% and just coloring in all those little shadowy areas. And I think that really adds some dimension to the page. And it looks a little stark at this point, but as we deepen the entire image, it won't look as pronounced as it does right now. So back to what I was talking about. So in addition to the flower year, I would be open, if there's interest, to picking a book and coloring each page in the book to completion. Maybe just one page, maybe 1 to 2 pages a month, depending on the amount of interest that we have. And we could do a poll for the book. I'm really open to that. if that's something that people want to do, I considered doing that for the ink house, but there are quite a few color alongs for that book on other people's channels. I don't have any because I haven't started that book yet. I did have a request for the Symphony of Cute Animals, and I do have color alongs for all the pages that I've colored in that book on the channel, so we could just continue on with that book, and I would be okay with that. I do plan on working in that book until it's completed eventually, but I can make that more of a priority if people want that. So let me know. But each one of your comments, I wrote them down and I am taking them under advisement, and most I will implement in some form along the way because that's important to me. If you take the time to reach out to me, I want to take the time to acknowledge it and to try and provide that in some way. I did get quite a few requests for the water mediums, Inktense, Albrecht Dürer, and Neocolor IIs, as well as pan pastels and distressed oxides. So I will be doing more of those in the future as well, which I inherently do anyway, so it's not really changing anything, but it does let me know that this is something that you're interested in. So don't feel like you have to wait for a specific video in order to let me know your thoughts. I am always open to your thoughts. Back to the picture, the indigo blue, this once again is just going back to making the picture read more blue and less purple because it's very lavender right now, and I definitely want it more like blue purple, not purple blue. If that makes sense. So I'm going to leave you to it for a minute, and then I will come back as we move into a new segment of coloring. Okay, so let's zoom in close. So now what I'm doing is I'm going in at the very base of the waves, and you can see where the dark marks are. So I start with my darkest color, and you want to make sure your pencil's really sharp for this because those are very small areas. And I'm sure I missed some, and that's okay because not all waves are going to be uniformly dark to light. So I will use different colors on different waves, and you don't have to be super precise about it. Just kind of go with the flow on this a little bit. But my idea is you want to put this darker color where the shadows are. Now, all the fish in this, I chose not to color. So as you can see, just below that card, there is a fish there, and just above where I'm coloring there to the left is a fish. And I just felt like I couldn't figure out what color to make them that wouldn't detract from the picture. You could definitely color them any color you want. You could, I thought about making them all black. I don't know if these are supposed to be hidden objects or if they're just a part of the picture. I chose to just make them waves. And I think it looks fine. So you do you, and let me know what you think. But sometimes I feel like less is more on a picture. And now I could have made them a little different blue, but I just felt like this is a very busy water. And to throw in another color, your eye is going to be like, wait a minute, what? I just resharpened my pencil. I think that's important when you're working in this small of an area to keep it really sharp. And of course this is Prisma, so they do wear down a little quicker. I personally have no problem working with Prismacolors in detailed areas. So next up we go to our second darkest color, which is that denim blue. So you're going to find I use the same colors throughout the entire piece in different ways. And I'm just going along the darkest, along where I applied that indigo blue. Now, in these small of areas, I don't think you have to really be as careful about, the blending process where you go dark and then you leave a little lighter spot so it'll blend into the next one. These are so very small. We're literally laying our colors right beside it. And because Prismacolor does blend, I think it works fine. So you'll notice that maybe some of them where I didn't have any of the indigo blue, now this becomes the darkest color. And that's fine. Especially on that left-hand side where there's a little bit lighter. Then I come in with the next lightest color, which is cerulean blue. Once again, just laying it, button it up right against the other, and you can see where I just went right over that fish and just made it a part of that wave. Now, if you're doing this, you may want to extend this all the way up to the water above the boat. I did make that water a little lighter, I believe. I didn't use like the indigo up there. Maybe I did. I don't know. We'll have to see. But just know that you're going to have to color that water the same way as well. For these areas, some people want to speed up through this repetitive type of stuff. You can always change that in your settings. Underneath the video, there's a gear. If you click on that, playback speed is there, and you can go 25%, 50%, normal playback, 1.25, 1.5, and 2.0, I think, or something like that. So if you want it to go faster, then you just, hit the 2 times speed. If you want to slow this down and see it in real time, watch it at half speed, because everything is filmed at 2 times the speed. So if you slow it down to half speed, you'll be seeing everything at real time, which in a very detailed area like this, you might find helpful. But you don't have to watch the entire thing that way. You can adjust it at this point to slow it down, and then when we get to a bigger area or someplace, then you can adjust it back. But I feel like this is a good way for me to put out videos that aren't 6 hours long, that people can find the speed that works best for them, because some people just watch this and then they hit pause and then they go color it all on their own. Other people like to color along literally wave by wave. And this way, both people have the option. So that's how I'm choosing to do the majority of my color alongs. If it is a short tutorial, those are usually at real time, and then the longer format, I am doing it this way. Now when you're using this lighter color, make sure to reserve some white. Now we're going to use Posca pen over it, but I still feel like you should always kind of get in the habit of leaving your white space if you can, simply because if certain colors will bleed into your Posca pen. Now usually by the time I'm adding these, they're on this really light blue. Oh, excuse me. I am so sorry. I didn't sleep very well last night, so I'm a little sleepy. But you're like, shut up, Winnie. Back to the thing. In this case, we're going over this sky blue light, which is an amazing light blue. We're not going to have any problems. However, if you are trying to go over reds or deep blues, you can have some difficulty. So next up is this light green. Now this is the same green that I used in the eyes, and I'm not using a lot of it, but I will put, if you notice, just ever so slightly here and there, kind of on the tips of towards the tips of the waves. I will then go over that with the Posca to give, but I want that to kind of, I don't know, I feel like it really adds something here and kind of ties that green in from below, indicating the water, if that makes sense. Okay, so up here at the top, I do go in with this denim blue. So I'm not using the indigo blue as my darkest tone. I am choosing to step it up one shade lighter as the deepest tone. Now here, Kerby hasn't put in near as many dark lines. That doesn't mean I can't add dark colors. It's just those are indicator lines to do with as we please. So I respect that, and I don't go in with my darkest tone, but I'm still putting in, I'm not making this, I could have started with this blue, or even, what's our next one? Non-photo, maybe? It's just a choice. But I'm doing the exact same thing that I did on the waves below. Little bit of color, butt it up to the next color, butt it up to the next color. But I do feel that this adds a very cohesive feel to the entire project. Once again, adding a little bit of that green. Now you don't want to go overboard on the green because you want your water ultimately, in my opinion, when you look at it, to read blue. But this will add just ever so slightly some interest. And then when I add the white in, I'm going to cover a little bit of that as well. So it won't be quite as, like right now you can really see the green a lot. Next up, we're going to start to work on our little bones, our skull. So I'm going in with French Gray 70 in the darkest areas. So where Kerby has put his lines and where I put the Neocolor II black, and in some cases where I didn't. So I'm just going in and I'm just adding in the darkest areas first. Now I see people question a lot, like, do you work dark to light or light to dark? I would say the majority of the time I work dark to light. And the reason that I do this is because, now first of all, I do base the layer, right? So I have an initial layer of that beige Neocolor II on these. However, when it comes to what I'm doing right now, if I start with my lightest, you can wash out your darkest colors. It's too easy to get your lights into your darks. Whereas if you have your darks in first, you know where they are. Now, there are other times, and I know this isn't very helpful when I say this, but there are times when I work in reverse, and I will try and tell you why I do the things that I do when I'm doing them, because there are times when that is not the exception. For example, if you see where I put the yellow in the sky. I put that in to mark my highlight so that I know I don't accidentally put my darker tones in it. However, like working on this structure, I know I'm going to go dark, medium, light, lightest, right, on these bones. So by putting my darkest in first, I can ensure that they will remain dark. If I put my lightest in first, you have a tendency to go over the entire thing light and then start a little, move a little bit and then start your second color and go over that one. So by the time you do that, you've now diluted your darkest color. So that's why I prefer it in this particular instance, especially, to start with my darkest. And you can see when you just have the very darkest to the lightest, my lightest base layer right next to this dark, it looks so stark and it looks hideous. And you're just like, Wendy, what are you even doing here? And this is why I always show you my completed page so that you know where we're trying to get to. And you can have faith that we are going to get there, because if you just look at this, you're going to think, oh my gosh, that looks terrible. It looks like a zebra. Guy's wearing a zebra on his head. Nobody wants zebras on their head. But as we add in, 50% gray and 30% gray, it is going to blend in, and those lights are going to not look, it's not going to look stripy like it does right now. So just trust the process. Just know that art, there's a saying that art has to go through an ugly phase. And I think that that's very true, because when I look at it right now, when I look at the sky, it looks ugly. When I look at the bones, they look hideous. Even the water doesn't look as great as it's going to look when I put the white highlights in, because the white and your very deepest tones and your very lightest tones, in my opinion, are really what bring any picture to life and make it look wow versus, oh, that's nice. So here I'm going in with 50% gray, in case it's kind of chopped off there. I'll try and edit that before we move on to the next segment. But you can see now, just blending that up against the 70%, you can get away with, these are what I call cheater blends, because I haven't done a good job of, going really dark with the 70% and then lightening up a little, and then going dark with the 50% and lightening it up. Number one, because we're using Prismacolors, and number two, because these blends, Prismacolor is amazing about their grays, that they stair step and you don't get big gaps in different colors. So as long as you're moving incrementally down, you can kind of get away with this blending. And you can see it's already starting to look better. So when you pull this color out, don't pull it out too far. You just want to pull it out a little bit, because we definitely want to maintain that lighter portion of the bone. So once again, just bringing it out a little ways. Last night I made potato soup. Not exactly low carb, but oh my gosh, was it so good. I made it with ham and potatoes, and at the very end I added a little bit of cheddar cheese into it, and it simmered on the stove for Lonnie had to work a little later than he thought, or he ended up getting home a little later than I thought he was going to get home. And so it simmered, and it kind of just condensed down. And then I immersion blended about half of it, or just, the nice thing about the immersion blender is you just do it until it's the way you want it. So it had the big chunks, but then it also had a really creamy consistency to it. And it was just the perfect fall dinner. And we had a little bit of sourdough bread with butter on the side. Like I said, not exactly low carb, but ever so good. And so what have you guys been cooking? Any good fall recipes? Let me know in the comments. So I could have went in with like a 30% French gray, or even 20% or something, but I really like this seashell pink. It adds a warm tone to this, and because I'm butting it right up against that, those French grays, I really like how this turned out. Now I'm not filling in all of the remaining area, but at least I'm leaving just a highlight on each of each of these little segments. So I'm not leaving a lot, but I am leaving some. But I really like the warmth that it adds, because I think adding that when this page is so definitely cool, it really works for me. Okay, so I'm going to leave you to it. Basically, you're going to go over, butt up next to that 50% French gray with the seashell pink. Leave some areas for your highlighted color, and then the next color will be 10% French gray. That'll be our highlight cover, and we'll go over all the remaining segments of the bone with that, or anything you haven't colored to that point. So I will catch up with you at that point. Okay, so next we're gonna sharpen our pencil and go in just to the deepest parts of this. I wanted to just add a little bit of black. I just want to deepen the very edge. And maybe not even, you might not see it on every single shadowy part, but on some of them for sure. Once again, I feel like adding these really dark values is what will help bring your pictures to life. The value is your darkest to your lightest tones, right? And when you have a good contrast between them, not necessarily just black and white, but think about a black and white image. If it is simply black and white, it's pretty like eye-popping, right? Whereas if you see something in grayscale, has all the tones. Now that can be pleasing to your eye, but it also doesn't, like, you're not gonna like look at like if you looked at 10 images and there was one in black and white and one in grayscale, the one in black and white is going to draw your eye first because it has the most distinct values, the distinct difference in values. So grayscale is more pleasing in, like, if you're trying to, you know, color grayscale, that makes sense. But if you have an entire picture of nothing but midtones, you're not going to get the awe factor. It might look good and people might go, oh, pretty, because it is pretty, but we all know the images that I'm talking about, and I'm not saying that mine always do that, but that's the goal I'm going for. And the reason that one of the ways to achieve that is to add in your blacks or your really deepest tones. And if you notice, I didn't start with black because black by itself can look flat, but black over the top of that French gray can add some depth without being just a flat black. So don't skip the step of the French gray. And then once again, when I add the Posca white highlights, like to the water and stuff, it's really going to make the entire image pop. Just adding little marks here and there as I go, well, I think I'd like that a little darker or whatever. And then I constantly step back and reassess. Next, I'm going to go in with a 90% gray, and I'm just going to add in my shadowy areas on the back sides of the bones, or the back side of the skulls. Now you could definitely use the 90% French gray or 70% French gray and make it more like the front. I just chose the cool gray because I don't know. I wish I had an answer to that. Maybe I didn't think it through. I did feel like this area would be more in shadow, and shadow tends to be cooler, so maybe that was my thought. Guys, I don't always make these decisions consciously. I don't always go, oh, well, you know, this, that, and the other. I might think, oh, that's a shadow, and it just felt like it should have cool gray. Now here I am bringing in that 50% French gray, tying it in with the rest of the bone because we definitely want it in the same color family. Okay, so here I'm using cream and I'm just putting it on the left hand side on the very edge of this flag, skipping over the little dragon or whatever image that is. This is me depicting sunlight on it, And so I'm just kind of going over that golden area that I left in the sky. This is me trying to depict like sunlight. So I'm going over the edge of those rims, and then I'm drawing in some actual beam of light, rays of sunshine, which I actually really like how that turned out. And then I'm just kissing the tips of these clouds with that cream. Not all over, just little spots here and there to give it that kind of an aura about it. Next up, we're going to fix this sky because it's a hot mess. Let me zoom in a bit. Okay, so I'm going in with slate gray here. Had a little trouble. I don't know why the Prisma... People complain about Prismacolors, and yes, they do this occasionally. And I get that that can be frustrating. I guess it just really depends on how you enjoy working with them. I really, really enjoy working with Prismacolor. I think they have the best color palette of any other colored pencil brand, meaning I feel like their selections are good. Nobody does grays and blacks better than Prismacolor. They just don't. Sorry, I gotta flip the book here. I'm trying to get into that edge, so I'm having to really pull the book up, which defeats you seeing it, but trust me, all I'm doing is just coloring in that area right there. So if you can see, I'm kind of going in a little bit of a curve now. You can see that little curve. I'm bringing that color down, even over the clouds, but I'm not I want the edges to be darker and the center to be lighter. And I'm bringing in this darker color into my clouds to depict the darker areas. That will make the lighter areas pop more. So just kind of around, where the marks of the clouds are. I want you to notice with this color how far back I hold that pencil. I am going over it so lightly, which is hard for me. So I appreciate it. No, I'm just kidding. I appreciate it, but I just barely want to add this color to the page. As I butt up to that slate gray, I am pressing a little harder, but not much. Next up is cloud blue. Once again, just notice how far back I'm holding the pencil. I am just barely going over the page. You can see it's laying down color, but it's not laying it down like if I held it in my hand like I was writing. This forces me to be lighter than I normally am, but I just want a hint of this color. I am going to be using a blender on this, so I'm going to allow the blender to do a little bit of the work for me, since I've haven't, it's a little streaky. And that's where a blender pencil can be your friend. And I really like the Caran d'Ache full blender. Now I'm going to add in a little bit of white in the clouds, and here or there, just kind of acting as a blender. So let's work on our flag a little bit. I'm going in with my 90% gray, or French gray, and I'm going to go in right along each of the lines there. And I'm not going to go over the little, let's call him a dragon, but I am going to go in between those little, his little wings there, and just along each of the ridges of this flag. And I am going to, it may not look like it, but I am leaving a little bit lighter towards the left, and a little darker right in that crease. It isn't super obvious, but it's there. Because just like I added the yellow to the left-hand side to depict the sunshine, this is depicting the shadows. And if you're wondering what the thing is, underneath my hand there, all along the seam of the book, I use washi tape, and I take that washi tape and I stick it to my pants or my arm several times to get a lot of the sticky out. And then I go ahead and I put 2 layers. So those are like inch-long pieces, or 3/4 of an inch piece. So you want a good 1.5 inches or 2 inches, because when you use things like Neocolors, you can get it on your hand from working, and then you'll transfer it to the other page. So that's why I'm doing that. So next I want to add in the color of the flag. So I start with this goldenrod right up against that 90% gray. So this goldenrod is going to add a bridge between that French gray and the yellow of the flag. I also feel like I chose this color because I wanted some warmth when the rest of the picture was so cool. And I really didn't want to add yet another quote-unquote color, such as red, right? I've already got the yellow in with the sky and kind of kissing this flag and the rocks and stuff. So I felt like this was a good choice. This is going to be the main color of the flag. So you can see I kind of started with my highlight with the cream, but then I went dark and all the way up to met. I didn't take that cream all the way into the dark, but I did reserve my highlight. So that's an example of when I technically started with the highlight, but then I worked dark to light. You could have went in with the cream, and then the next the jasmine, and then the next the goldenrod, and then followed it up with your what I used, 90% French gray. The choice certainly is yours, whatever you feel most comfortable with. Sometimes I put in like when I laid in that cream, I was kind of looking to see, did I like it? Did I like the look of it? If I didn't, when you use a cream like that versus going in with your main color, which is kind of the jasmine color, it allows you the opportunity to see, do I like this? Because you could probably erase cream pretty well. Now here I'm going in with goldenrod over all of that 90% gray. And the reason I did this is because I felt like it looked too black orange. And by adding the goldenrod over that darker tone, it started to read more orangey brown, which would make sense for a shadow of a yellow in a deep shadow, right? Whereas just the darker gray by itself, I just didn't like it. So that's all I'm doing. And I'm actually burnishing this, so I'm going in pretty dark or pretty heavy-handed there. So next we're going to use the jasmine on the flags, on the smaller flags there. Well, the one is the other boat's sail, and then the flag at the top of this one. So I'm using the jasmine, the goldenrod, and the French gray. And I'm just kind of swapping back and forth between the two, which is why I have both on the screen, because I'm just kind of blending them out and then adding in the deepest shadow with the 90% French gray. Sorry, the camera is directly above my hand here, so you can't get a good view of what I'm doing. And then blending the entire thing out with cream. Okay, let's work on our little dragon. So we're going to go in and just where the darkest spots are, we're going to add this black grape. So I'm not going all the way out across. I'm just basically where I put the 90% gray on the yellow part, I'm going to put the black grape on the purple part. Lightening it up a little as you move into the flag, away from the crease. Looks kind of funny right now. Oh my goodness, guys, I am so sleepy. I am so very sorry. Hope I'm not making you yawn. Okay, so next up is, I believe this is violet. I will put a note on the screen what it is, since I did not switch out my card there. But I'm just going over the remaining dragon. Okay, let's get started on our little people. I chose French gray to go over like the bulk of their clothing and such. I really didn't want the people to be a focal point in this image at all, so I went with colors that are going to blend into the scenery, right? So very neutral, very, very similar to the skull. Adding in the shadows. With the 90%, I'm not going to do a lot of detail on these at all. You could get more detailed if you wanted to. You could use fine liners, you could use gel pen, you could do a lot of different things, but I just really wanted them to kind of more take center, or not take center stage. So seashell pink, that's the color that I used in the skull. I thought that would be a good color for their skin. You could use flesh. You could use any of your skin tones that you wanted to. I just chose this one because we had used it already, and I feel like whenever you can use colors throughout your design, you will get a little more cohesion. So I think now I'm going to start to work on the boat. Maybe not. Oh yeah, they have a few more little accoutrements, like their little hats and stuff. But you tell me, in that small a scale, does it make any difference that those were cool gray versus that French gray? I don't think so. Here I used just a little darker cool gray probably. Once again, I don't think it matters. Use whatever pencil you have at hand. Just make sure they're all covered. I need to work on the angle of my camera, maybe put it a little off to the side for you guys. Basically, I'm going in with this boat, and because it's so far back, I'm just using darker colors, just using the dark grays to depict that boat. Okay, so here what I'm doing is I'm going in with the 90% cool gray, and I'm not going real heavy on this. I would say a light medium light. How do you want to say that? Starting a little bit medium, working my way to a light, I guess is the best way to phrase it. So up in the shadowy areas, I'm a little heavier handed than as I go into the boat. As I go in, I'm being much lighter. And then there are a few places where it's kind of annotated that it's a little darker. So I go ahead and run this cool 90% gray in there. This is my underlayer, and this is going to give my red that I use some depth and make it look rich. Like, you know how mahogany wood or like that dark cherry wood has that real just rich color to it? It's not candy apple, it's just, it has, I don't know how to describe it other than to say like depth. But by putting an underlayer, we could have used our French grays here. I wanted a cooler tone under it because I'm going to put a warm tone over the top. It's really your choice. I would take a piece of paper and swatch them and see which you like better. I did not put it over the entire thing, and in some areas I put it in a much darker, like over on this side where you see I'm working right now, it's much darker. I wanted those red tones to shine through in that little segment. Okay, next up is terracotta. And we're going to go over everything that we just did, plus the areas that I didn't cover with the cool gray. We're going to go over the entire boat, not counting the trim. I want the trim to be a different color. So, but the entire boat I'm going over with probably, I guess maybe a medium, you know. For me, might be a light hand. I'm definitely not burnishing, and I'm not doing like the super, I want to put down 100 layers light. So medium. But you can see where if I would have done the whole boat in that terracotta, the whole boat would look brown. By adding this gray underneath, it makes it look darker. It makes it look a little more rustic maybe, or a little more weathered. And then we're going to honey it up here in a second and make it look really rich in our next layer. So I'm going over the darkest areas here with this dark brown. And I'm going over all of it. Once again, kind of like a medium tone. And I decided to go over the remainder of that fish and just blend it into the boat. Now, if you wanted your boat to be a little lighter, you could have used goldenrod over this layer. You could have went in, instead of using the 90% at the beginning, you could have used maybe a 50%, and that would have changed the look as well. I really like the darker wood tones here. I think they look really good. And I like the red peeking out. Okay, next up is our little oars. I'm just doing them in goldenrod. I just want a lighter brown so that they stand out away from the boat, I guess. And then I go in with the dark brown just on the bottom where they would be shadowed a little bit. So finishing up with this mast, going in with 90% cool gray. Okay, let's go in and do our little shields. So for Unity, I just chose this violet color, which you recall is kind of the main color of the dragon there. Now I just went every other one and there wasn't one, so I just kind of made one myself. So how many of you guys live for the pumpkin pie or the pumpkin spice season? I know people that love all the pumpkin spice stuff. There's pumpkin spice sundaes and lattes and frappuccinos, and heck, Wendy's even now has a pumpkin spice frosty, which I'm like, okay. Personally, I'm not a big fan of pumpkin pie. And so I don't know if that influences me. I like the seasonings that go into it. And my son and daughter-in-law came over, I don't know, right at the beginning of the season. Oh, maybe it was last year. But I remember, no, I went over to their house and they bought me a Starbucks. I like cold brew if I'm going to drink Starbucks, which I just can't justify spending $7 on coffee because I'm a cheap ass because I want all the coloring stuff. But if I do drink something there, I like the cold brew. And they did give me a pumpkin spice cold brew, which was good. It was fine. I try very hard too not to drink sugary coffee. Like my husband likes to put hot cocoa in his coffee, and I love the taste of it, but it just adds so many more calories, and I'd rather eat my calories. Here I made the final decision on the fish, so I'm just blending them all in. So anyway, let me know what you think. Do you like Starbucks? Do you like pumpkin pie spice or pumpkin, what is it, pumpkin spice? Just let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Anytime you guys comment, you could comment about the weather. I don't care. I love hearing from you guys. It really makes my day. And like I said, when I did the giveaway and everyone was, and part of the giveaway was you had to tell me what you wanted to see more of on the channel. That was so helpful for me to hear from you guys what you're interested in, because as my channel grows, you know, if I ask, let's say in the first month that I was a channel, I had 100 subscribers, and those guys said one thing that might not render itself now that I have over 1,000 subscribers. So I'm always wanting to stay on the pulse of what you guys are interested in so that you find value in the channel. Also, don't be afraid if you have a specific question and you're like, well, you know, don't feel like, oh, I don't want to bother her or whatever. I now have Instagram, so you can direct message me there. You can direct message me. Let me zoom you guys in a little. So you can direct message me on Facebook. You can comment on any video, or you can email me. My email's in the bio, but it's just jazzydoodledesigns@gmail.com. Basically, I'm using the black here. I just kind of did this little swirly majig thing up the sides, making, you know, no real pattern there. If I were to do this over again, I probably would have went in with the light color first, the gold, whatever gold that I use here, goldenrod. I probably would have put that in there first and then put the black, just because then it has a tendency to smear the black a little bit, and second of all, the black would have went over this goldenrod just fine. So if you haven't started, do that. I chose goldenrod here. I debated on using a metallic pen. I have several. I have a Sparkle Pop. I also have a Deco Gold, which is a little more antique-y, and I liked it, and I use it in the little rivets of the shields. But other than that, I chose not to because I feel like this is a boat, and I don't know that boats would have gold laden, like, it'd be really heavy to have gold on their boat, and probably not very practical. You know, this is like a Viking ship, not a, you know, a royalty barge or something. So anyway, and I chose goldenrod over let's say jasmine or something like that, because I wanted it to read more antique gold. I chose the bronze pencil here for the same reason. I just want it to look antique-y and not, I don't want it to compete with the flag behind it as well. But I'm just going over all of these little parts and pieces. Of these shields. Kind of touching up any white spots on the boat. Next up, I'm just going over the skull down here. Everything with a light layer of black, or cool gray 90. This is cool gray 90. I'm just wanting it to all read a little darker. So just a very light layer. But you can tell it does make a difference. It's funny how those subtle changes can make a difference. And I'm just kind of stopping, taking a look, and just seeing where I feel like I want things to be a little darker. I decided I wanted a few of these deeper waves to be darker, not all of them. So I definitely didn't go over every wave, but just a few. It just adds a little more depth in those areas. Deepening the shadow here on the back. Just adding a few more dark spots. Okay, next up, the Caran d'Ache Full Bright Blender. Take a look at the difference as I do this. It's amazing the difference that it makes. Now I am using fairly firm pressure, and as I move from the black to a lighter color, I do kind of wipe it off a little bit because I don't want to draw that black up into that blue around the skull there, because I want that to be, look how it looks like it's glowing now. To me, this step can make all the difference. So I'm going to leave you to it and I'll be back. Oops, I forgot the mask. But wow, what a difference that blender made. Okay, for the final touches, I'm going in with my Posca marker. This is the 1.0. And I'm just going to go over all the waves. I'm just barely touching the tips of the waves. Just a very fine little, sometimes just little dots, sometimes an actual line. Sometimes I skip a little line, make a little jagged line. We just want to add some little pops of white. Next, I'm going to come in with an ivory Posca. Next, I come in with this ivory Posca and I draw little rays in and I smudge them if needed. And then I had a few little white spots that were missed on the boat, so I go ahead and fill those in with that bronze pencil. Next, I use a Deco Gold paint pen to go over the little rivets in the shields. Last up, I just take some white craft smart paint and a cotton ball, and I just kind of blot it out, and then I test it on a piece of paper. That's what I was just doing, but I want to just kind of blot it over where I want the foggy areas. And so I'm just dabbing lightly. You don't want to push too hard because then you'll fill it all in and you'll lose that misty look to it. So don't, just barely tap it in your white paint and barely tap it on your paper. If you start seeing little patterns, then move your, see, I kind of got those little dots there. Just kind of move your cotton ball and reassess. You can always tap off on a different piece of paper to see if you're getting the effects that you want. My goal for this was just to kind of have it like a mist hanging over the water. Does that make sense? The water level. And I see the water level on my picture as being where the change of color happens, where that light blue meets the darker blue on the left and on the right, like the black. And I just keep kind of dabbing and blotting and just keep applying paint until I find what I'm looking for. Right here, I feel like it's just too much around the skull and I need to start broadening out. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. I debated on going all the way to the skyline and eliminating all the water on the left-hand side. And maybe I should have. but in the end I didn't. I did try and fade it out a little bit to where it was heavier saturation there at the bottom and then lighter as I go up on the top. Okay, so that about wraps it up for this color along. As always, I appreciate you sticking with me, and I hope you enjoyed yourself, and we'll catch you on the next one. If you like this kind of content, don't forget to hit like and subscribe.